So my training's definitely evolved over the years. It's very different now from how it was in the beginning. When I first started, it was more a case of go outside, try some jumps, see what my friends were doing, try that as well. Try some moves I'd seen on the internet, some other people had tried as well. It was very loose, very improvised. It was great fun. It was really good fun. But I quickly realised that if I wanted to make a lot of progress with this, I'd have to structure it a bit more, have a bit more continuity in my training, not do quite as much of the crazier stuff, I guess. So I wouldn't last doing that kind of stuff. I had to be a bit more structured, a bit more carefully thought out. Still doing that work, but not as often maybe. Because the big jumps in the beginning were great fun. We all did them. But you can't last training that way all the time. My training is very varied at the moment. There's a lot of different things going on. It's not just parkour stuff. It's not just physical conditioning as we know it in parkour. I do a lot of weightlifting now. I sprint. I do a lot of mobility work on the foam rollers, lacrosse balls, that kind of thing. I'm into ring training. I like running. Anything that's physically challenging, I enjoy. And I can see that it all contributes to parkour in different ways. So I guess it depends on your definition of parkour, but I see all those other training methods as ways of getting stronger for parkour. So a typical training week for me, there's no typical training week really. It's all very different. It depends whether I'm at home or whether I'm away on a trip or something. If I am at home, it's usually broken up into quite short sessions, but quite frequently. I'll probably train up to 5 days a week usually, with 2 days that are a bit quieter. Maybe there'll be 3 or 4 much heavier sessions throughout that week, and some lighter recovery work as well, which is really important. So things like weightlifting, I've seen a lot of carryover very quickly in lifting weights to other areas of parkour. It's helped with jump size, which is always useful. Being able to jump further. It's also helped a lot with taking impacts. So being very solid, feeling that the body is one unit rather than a series of different parts, which is very useful. I think all the compound lifts in weightlifting are very good. I tend to focus on the big basic ones, so squats, deadlifts, things like that. I train actual parkour, so actual movement stuff, 3-4 times a week. So 3 or 4 different sessions a week working on those. And they tend to be quite particular, so working on one area or 2 areas. I still go out and play and mess around and have fun, but most of my training has a goal at the beginning of that session. There'll be a purpose to the session, there'll be a goal for the session, and an actual outcome I'm trying to reach by the end of it. Some more space to the right, which will make this step a little easier. Yeah, find that middle ground between speed and impact. Maybe outside this exit. It's after the landing, find a way over here. Very up and then down. Need to go further forward. Make the roll more effective. Still fast between here and there, but it's less impact on the body now, which is good. Just fix the steps in between the last drop and the wall run now. So I tend to have maybe 3 or 4 parkour sessions in a week. I tend to lift weights twice a week. I sprint every other week, either with bands or without usually, for more resistance, different kind of work. I do some ring training every other week as well. Physical conditioning stuff is maybe 2 or 3 times a week, so it's all kind of spread out throughout the week. And yeah, you hear a lot of people say I go out and train 8 hours a day and this and that, but it's really hard to do that. If you train properly, you can't train 8 hours in a day. You can train for 1, 2, 3 hours max if you're really productive. If you say you train 8 hours a day, you probably spend 6 of those kind of walking between spots or getting some lunch or talking to friends or resting between jumps. But actual hard, intense training, between 2 and 4 hours max in a day, probably more than enough for me. I kind of look back in my training diary quite a lot, so I use that not to kind of keep track of what I've trained recently, but what I haven't trained recently. So what's missing? What haven't I done for a while that I should be doing? I have my staple exercises that I always go back to, but there's certain ones that might take a back seat for a little while. So that diary is in place to kind of come back to stuff and work on those weak areas.